This was the first Microsoft Flight Simulator in 1982. And this is Microsoft Flight Simulator in 2020. Not only does it have phenomenal graphics, it is also the first actual open-world game, meaning you can fly anywhere, above the skyscrapers in New York, the pyramids in Egypt, and even your own home. For those wanting to control airplanes and explore the world from the comfort of your home, there has never been a more exciting time. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up as we journey through the evolution of Microsoft Flight Simulator. It all started with a pilot named Bruce Artwick, who was interested in computers. Bruce founded a software company named Sublogic and developed Flight Simulator in 1979. At the time, computers couldn't handle much more than a few lines at once, and it's easy to understand why if you look at the specifications of the Apple II, for which Flight Simulator was developed. It was an 8-bit computer that only had 4 kilobytes of RAM and a processor running at 1 megahertz. Microsoft gained interest and obtained the license from Sublogic to create the first Microsoft Flight Simulator in 1982, also referred to as Flight Simulator 1.0. It featured improved graphics, with color this time, variable weather, and the time of day. Advertisements boldly claimed if flying your IBM PC got any more realistic, you'd need a license. Yeah, I don't think so. Version 2.0 was launched in 1984. Minor improvements were made to the graphics and the game's precision. With version 2.0, it was also possible to use a joystick or a mouse. In 1988, Microsoft released version 3.0. It came in a box with a floppy disk inside to play the game. Version 3.0 added new airports, had higher frame rates, better graphics, and it was finally possible to use external camera angles. In the following year, Flight Simulator 4.0 was released. The box was almost similar to the previous Microsoft Flight Simulator. It wasn't very clear which version you had, since all the box said was New Version. You had to know what artwork to look for. Version 4.0 had upgraded aircraft models, dynamic scenery, random weather, and special modes, like a mode where you could fly a World War I airplane and shoot down enemy airplanes. It also had some very beautiful, nostalgic music. Released at the end of 1993, Flight Simulator version 5.0 ramped up the realism using textures to create scenery for the first time. Graphics and aircraft models were further improved, weather systems upgraded, artificial intelligence was introduced, and users could modify their cockpits for each aircraft. In 1995, Microsoft Flight Simulator 5.1 was the first version to be released on CD-ROM. It featured satellite imagery, faster performance, and it had many weather effects. There was also a program to build your own airports and cockpit panels. After the release of Windows 95, Microsoft developed Flight Simulator for Windows 95. It was almost the same as its predecessor, except for the improved frame rates and additional aircraft. It also included major airports outside Europe and the US for the first time. The next edition, Flight Simulator 98, came in 1997. The game was a huge success and sold over 1 million copies. It was the first to take advantage of 3D with graphic cards through Microsoft's DirectX technology. Flight Simulator 98 had better performance, more modeled airports, distinct sounds for every type of aircraft, and a helicopter. 2 years later, Flight Simulator 2000 was released. Many were disappointed that the game demanded a high-end computer to play the game, and even on high-end systems, frame rate stuttering was a problem in some dense areas. Flight Simulator 2000 was a considerable improvement in terms of graphics and details, incorporating rain and snow for the first time and allowing users to download real-world weather conditions. It also added GPS and new airplanes, like the Concorde and the Boeing 777. But the most notable addition was the 17,000 new airports that were added, bringing the total to over 20,000 airports. Flight Simulator 2002 was released in 2001, shortly after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Microsoft was at the center of controversy because reports showed the terrorists had used Flight Simulator to prepare the attacks. Due to the terrorist attacks and to respect the victims, the Twin Towers were removed from the game. The game introduced air traffic control to communicate with airports and artificial intelligence aircrafts to fly alongside computer-controlled aircrafts. It continued the upwards trend in graphics, and Microsoft also managed to make the game run smoother. Flight Simulator 2004, A Century of Flight, celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Wright brothers' first flight. It featured several historical aircrafts, including the Wright Flyer used by the brothers. The weather engine was improved. It allowed for 3D clouds and localized weather conditions for the first time. GPS and air traffic control were also improved. Then came Flight Simulator X in 2006. The game had improved graphics, higher resolution textures, and a better multiplayer experience. Flight Simulator X had the ability for players to be an air traffic controller and for 2 players flying in a single airplane. The game included 18 planes, 28 detailed cities, and over 24,000 airports for the standard version, while the deluxe version had even more planes and detailed cities. An expansion pack called Flight Simulator X Acceleration was brought out 1 year later and included new missions and aircraft. All of which brings us to the latest Microsoft Flight Simulator, released on August 18, 2020. After a gap of almost 14 years since the last major release, Microsoft unexpectedly launched this magnificent game. Let's just take a moment to appreciate how gorgeous it is. This, ladies and gentlemen, truly is the future of gaming. This game is the first actual open-world game. It simulates the entire Earth using textures and data from Bing Maps. Microsoft partnered with Blackshark.ai, who developed a solution that uses the groundbreaking technology of Microsoft Azure and artificial intelligence to analyze map data and generate photorealistic 3D models of buildings, trees, water, and so on. Flight Simulator does not only look ultra-realistic, it also simulates the real world as much as possible, with realistic physics and real-world weather data, meaning if there's a storm somewhere in real life, there's also a storm in-game in the same place. In total, the game includes a staggering 37,000 airports, of which 30 are handcrafted in the Standard Edition. The number of airplanes varies from 20 to 30 for the different editions. While Microsoft Flight Simulator has long loading times and you need a beast of a PC to obtain the ultra graphics, you can't help to be blown away by the scale and photorealism of this simulator. Satellite imagery and real-world technology combine to provide an extremely satisfying and realistic experience, allowing players to travel to pretty much any destination and explore the world with remarkable accuracy. Flying has never been so much fun. And thanks to Corona, probably the only way we'll be flying anytime soon.